in the spirit of not wasting a single moment of time, I am not going to do a long intro because I am trying, this being Germany, to get us back on time. So forgive the fast forward speech. We're just trying to move things along here. We are going to bring up our next panel. It is about the industrial metaverse, the topic that we have been speaking about all day, and it is moderated by the head of future computing and microelectronics. Natalia, forgive me, I'm going to give this my best shot. Natalia Stoliarchuk and her panel. Welcome.
So, good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here. And thank you, Sarah, for a nice introduction and spelling my name properly. So now that we got the first idea of what industrial metaverse is or could be and all the exciting potentials that Siemens, as big industrial user, is linking to it, I would like to speak to those who are gearing up to make industrial metaverse to one of their future business models. So how do they understand the industrial metaverse? And how their customers will use it, and why should they use it in the first place? And how, and most interestingly, when are they planning to make profits with this? And I'm happy to welcome here my dear guests, Susanne Haspinger, Chief Operations Officer from Holo-Light. Welcome.
Thanks.
Next guest is Hendrik Witt, Chief Product Officer from Teamviewer.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Linn, Global Director Solutions Engineering in Unity. So to start with, I would like to lay a foundation what we're speaking about and to ask you how you understand industrial metaverse in general. Susanne, I would like to start with you. Holo-Light offers augmented reality and virtual reality solutions, especially in the field of engineering and industry. What is industrial metaverse from your point of view, and where would you position the products, the services that you create within this industrial metaverse field?
Thanks first for the invitation to join us, to join you today here. So we from Holo-Light, as we specialized on two different parts. On one side, the engineering use case, but on the other side, also the streaming technology in the background to handle problems like we already heard before of complex data, latency, and processing power. We basically focus on one side on the streaming for the whole use cases itself, but also on the engineering prototyping use case, which was for us the first entry point in the industry. And to answer your question, what the metaverse for us is, it's basically, it's the next step. It's a way of using your digital data and bringing it to the user itself by putting the user in the centrum and not on the side behind the screen. A way to collaborate, to work together, to reduce the barriers, and just use what you already have in a good way.
Thank you. So, similar question to you, Hendrik. I think pretty much everybody in this room knows what Teamviewer is, and pretty much everybody used it once or at least twice for remote control of their PCs. But you joined the Teamviewer with the acquisition of Ubimax. It is the world market leader for industrial augmented reality. So, what is the Teamviewer vision towards industrial metaverse? How is Teamviewer going to contribute to it?
Yeah, so good question. So I think first of all, yes, I guess it's fair point to say everyone knows Teamviewer for its iconic product around remote control and remote support for IT equipment and all sorts of digital devices. But today we actually moved way beyond that, right? We're now operating industrial machinery from remote, for example, which is already a hint on why we're investing into the industrial metaverse. And then, like you mentioned, with the acquisition of the Ubimax business, which was bringing in the so-called frontline product line, we're venturing in the space of really providing frontline applications for the industrial metaverse. And the way we do it and how we believe we can contribute to the industrial metaverse is really by looking at the industrial metaverse not as a version where you completely block out reality, so it's all virtual, We believe in the perfect blend of the two. So the digital world and the real world get perfectly blended into together, which you could refer to as an augmented reality, mixed reality type of a setup. And our solutions are more geared towards rather mobile use cases, you could say, where Annika was referring to rather stationary environments where you have, all sorts of digital twin type of environments, which is rather stationary. What Teamviewer Frontline does and what we're providing to our customers is really on-the-go support. So it's rather leveraging augmented reality almost in the fashion of head-up displays in cars so that the frontline workers can actually tap into digital information at real time, but actually carrying out the primary activity, which is in reality, be it in logistics, manufacturing, field service, or the classical you see what I see remote support type of thing where we're leveraging those technologies.
It's very interesting. We will talk a bit more in details about applications and specific use cases a bit later. And Henning, now I would like to ask you, Unity is mostly or most widely known for its gaming platform. But you are coming from the also augmented reality, virtual reality side, let's say. So how does Unity use in its product, its competence, its know-how in the industrial metaverse?
Yeah, so as you said, we have our heritage in gaming. More than 70% of all mobile games are powered by Unity. I think it's around 50% when it comes to all games. So the question is, why using a game engine for metaverse experiences? First of all, I think metaverse and also industrial metaverse is putting the human being in the center of things again. It is we created all of these data lakes, a lot of metadata, CAD data, IoT data floating around, and I think the metaverse inherits the promise of making this human accessible again. Yes, VR is a piece of that, but it's not necessarily VR. It's just a medium of experiencing the data in a most human-centric way that helps decision-making, that helps training and other use cases. So why a game engine? Well, games are a super human-focused thing, right? And they provide, and when I came to this career doing IT and computer science by playing games, and I was always excited about building these virtual worlds, right? And a world could also be a universe. So a game engine already provides a lot of aspects you want to find in this digital world crafting, which is physics, which is lifelike rendering, which is real time, which is 3D. And so I think game engines per se are a great medium to unlock this potential of the metaverse. As you see, Siemens and also those partners are using our technology to enable these use cases.
So I think we saw now in presentation from Siemens that metaverse is kind of everything. So it's a combination of various technologies. So how do we really understand metaverse in comparison to digital twins, in comparison to Industry 4.0, VR? Is it all together? What is new about metaverse when we have heard about all of this stuff already?
Well, for my take, I want to differentiate between a digital twin. I don't know, maybe this image does not work perfectly, but if you see the big ocean of data, right, then you have fish swimming there, which are the digital twins, but there is more that connects those together, which is the water, actually. So a lot of metadata and so on and so on. And you can, to put it like this, to experience that metaverse, it is like, and that is the analogy to VR, you can go deep diving, scuba diving, and need to wear equipment, and you can really immerse yourself into the ocean. But you can also swim on top of it by have a glass boat and still experience that. So to answer your question in terms of where digital twin, Industry 4.0, and that's it, actually, I think industrial metaverse is a cooler name than Industry 4.0, to be honest. That's one difference.
Fair point.
But it's much easier to explain maybe the difference between digital twin and metaverse, because the industrial metaverse or Industry 4.0 is more than just digital twins. Digital twin can be of one good or of one machine or of one process, but it's not. It doesn't show the connectivity between those, right? And at least we at Unity, we usually think in 4 schemes of digital twins. The first one is the visual digital twin, which we mostly see today. Mercedes, BMW, and others using also our technology to visualize a car and substitute the hardware mockups, which is just visual. The next stage then is a connected digital twin. So you already connected to IoT data or other data sources. The next one after that is a predictive digital twin, where the model already helps you to identify or to simulate future scenarios and make assumption out of that. And the last scenario then is potentially a fully autonomous digital twin, and that is Skynet, I don't know, and we all die. But a system that regulates itself based on the simulation it does.
Interesting. And can we maybe speak about what's the difference, or how does industrial metaverse differ from the public or consumer metaverse? What are the different requirements, or do they complement each other, and how much they differ?
Well, I could try. I would say there is not the answer to it. For me, let's say the consumer metaverse is probably the highest bar, because from the consumer perspective, everything needs to be perfect, photorealistic renderings, all these type of things, because the acceptance criteria of us consumers are just getting higher and higher every year with new technology coming to the market. And I think we've been seeing recently was Apple's launch of the new device, which everyone probably is familiar of. How high Apple perceived the bar is in consumer, and they've been spending 8 years, if I'm not mistaken, on this, maybe even more, with massive amounts of investments to get to a level where they felt comfortable and they can test the waters, I would argue. On the industrial side, I would say we can be quicker, because it's tools used in our professional lives, and we tend not so much to question whether this is a good enough thing. We expect basically ourselves, because it's a work environment, to work with these tools. So there is an opportunity from my perspective in the industrial metaverse to be quicker, to realize and actually leverage the benefits out of the industrial way earlier. And from my perspective, I would say it is already beginning. Right? So that's for me a little bit.
I want to build a bit. I want to build on that. So I like to differentiate, or what I use usually when I talk to customers. The industrial metaverse is mainly everything that's happening behind the firewalls of a company, maybe connecting with suppliers and so on to solve business problems, which are mainly about saving money of production, reducing risk, security stuff. And the public metaverse or the commercial metaverse is something that's everything related to marketing, and it's like what we see today in games, movies, maybe the future of interactive movies, whatever will come. And I assume that a part of, and I want to stick to my analogy with this ocean, right? Maybe a peak of these icebergs that resemble the product of, let's say, a Mercedes car or something, is something a company in the future wants to expose to the public metaverse. Because, like, imagine, I can vividly imagine a future, and today be aware, what do you think the average age of a gamer is today? 36-year-olds, the average age of a gamer. Generation Z, more than 72% of them are gamers. So they expect a game-like experience, and maybe they also want to see a Mercedes car driving around in their game-like experience, which could be an interactive movie or a movie, and they still want to see it and say, I want to buy that good. I want to buy that watch that character is wearing. So what I'm saying is that it's also how should I put it, this aspect of a company reaching out to the public metaverse. It's more than just a 2D image or what typically marketing is using today. It's a 3D representation of your product, which is much more usable to gain insights from your end customers, to use that data then in your industrial metaverse to amplify or to get your production better done, and to take those inputs as considerations to improve your product, but also just to sell more.
So it will be some kind of merge between two at some
I see definitely the lines blurring. Obviously, you have still like IP protection and IT security topics. Therefore, they will always have the stuff behind the firewall. But I see a definite connection between the digital twins in these metaverses, maybe, to be connected.
I would like to now go to the topic of applications and use cases. We have seen some examples now from Siemens. Hendrik, you already mentioned some examples. Susanne, I would like to ask to you, where do you see the biggest potential for your customers? You have to, in your job, you deal a lot with customers and investors. What do you tell them? What are the promises that your product offers?
So usually I prefer not to go with the promises, but with examples from our customers. So as we already have a big customer base, we see in our daily life with them how to use the technology, how they have use cases established, which are already kind of the first step in the metaverse. We have automotive customers who are building whole prototypes in AR and VR. They've reduced the time frame for a new prototype, for a new car, by 12 months, just by skipping prototypes and doing the design reviews in AR. But we also have customers in the medical area who are planning whole knee surgeries in VR and AR, and they are training the surgeons before making the real surgery. So you can basically reach from one part of your fantasy to the other. With the technology developing and enhancing our daily life, it will partially get step by step into every part of our lives.
It's mind-blowing for me to imagine the surgeon doing it in a virtual reality. Hendrik, do you have some exciting examples from some use cases from your experience that you already worked on?
Yes, I think first and foremost, I think the key element here is I want to echo there is already existing customers. So it's not just a futuristic element. I think training is one of the use cases where you see, which is fairly close to, prototyping and these things, because you can experience things in the digital world. There we're seeing a lot of customers, in particular when it gets to very complex processes that you need to train on and get educated on. We see a massive decrease in the amount of effort that goes into the training procedure up until the point that you hit a certain threshold there. So that's certainly one of the exciting cases, I would say. And then, since I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of what Teamviewer does is more on-the-go support, I would say. So more, rather, not so stationary use cases, but rather, let's say, for example, in logistics, right? Which is order fulfillment in warehouses. What the hell has this to do with the metaverse, you could say? Well, it is basically, giving instructions to the people, giving digital overlays on top of reality, helping them, for example, to find and identify goods in the warehouse much quicker. So it is an element of, process performance improvement. But certainly there is also a big element of quality improvements that those customers get as tangible benefits of the technology. And frankly, that is what matters in the metaverse, that they get the business benefits out of it. It is not so much about the technology. If you come with other technology and it gets you the same benefits, they can also go with that technology. But what we found is those benefits and the scale of those benefits that we're delivering, they couldn't achieve with any other technology they were trying out in their processes.
You have something to add to this topic? You mentioned there is no customers yet. So imagine someone comes and tells to you, I would like to embark on a journey with Metaverse. What would you tell them? Where should they start? What should they have? What kind of tech infrastructure they have to have? What are, so to say, the first steps?
I would always recommend crawl, walk, run, in the sense of start out simple. Because the reality is that with the metaverse and everything around it, people get sometimes overly excited, I would say, and they come up with a whole bunch of use cases and possibilities. While all of these are possible, some are easier to manage than others. And I would always recommend to start simple and then get going, learn. I think that is for me the most important aspect, where I've also seen frankly, organizations failing because they were taking on too early a too big challenge. Because you certainly have to learn as an organization. It's not just a technology play. It has a lot to do with change management, equipping people with new sorts of technology, and the organization itself also needs to be able to digest all of this, what is happening, because it's a massive change for the better. However, it is a change.
Thank you. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, I fully agree. And besides, I mean, at the beginning, it always needs to be there needs to be a problem you're solving and the value you add. I fully agree to the change process because I give you an example. So from 2024 on, so we made a great deal with Mercedes. It is public, so I can talk about it now. From 2024 on, Unity will be in their cars. So a part of your in-car experience will be made with Unity. And using a game engine technology for them was a huge shift of paradigm. The software development of an in-car system is a pretty waterfall, cumbersome, and not super agile process, especially as there are suppliers involved and so on and so on. If you would apply that process to a game, and Red Dead Redemption or like super AAA games, they take 6 to 8 years to be developed, we wouldn't have seen any of those today. It's not how smart application, smart device apps and games are developed. It's a completely different process. So you have to embrace that idea of also with this new technology being out there to also adapt your internal processes, your teams. Maybe you need different roles in games. You have something like a tech artist that is not a developer, but it's also not an artist. It's someone that helps you to build a bridge. Some companies don't know that at all. So what I'm saying is be agile, but I want to underline what you said perfectly. Just try out small things. Start walking. Don't be afraid of failure. I really like what the colleague from Arthur VR said earlier about our friends in America. Don't be afraid of failing, right? There's nothing, you can only learn through that. And through that, adopt and move on. So this is, I would think, the biggest advice I would give. The technology is there. We have talented people out there. So it's just about getting a bit more agile.
Thank you. What do you think, Susanne? What would your first step be?
Couldn't agree more with the problem and use case part. Just because it's fancy doesn't bring you that far. You need something you solve with it. But one thing I would definitely like to add, bring your IT on board. We've seen several of our customers struggling because they had this fancy use case, they had an amazing problem and solution, and after everything went out well, IT was just doesn't work with our infrastructure. So we always recommend, as soon as you talk to supplier, as soon as you have your problem, your use case, bring in your colleagues from IT. They will decide in the end if it works or not. And in the best case, you have them on your side from the beginning on.
That's a very good point. So maybe to start wrapping up our discussion, you already mentioned several points. So what do you see the main challenges, the main barriers to really broadly start implementing Metaverse? Please.
So, same problem, but twofold. It's silos. In a lot of companies, you still see a lot of silos, especially in these big corporations, like from our automotive friends, right? And this new technology and the promise of industrial metaverse is connecting those disciplines, right? So that you can have the design something, you do simulation in the background, you see already what it does for you. So that needs a collaboration on different levels. So if I would give an advice to every CEO, CTO, break down those silos, make it more agile, maybe by building small working groups that collaborate and then break it down to the original organization. I know efficiency, and I know you still need to do that and execute on that level, but you have to make that possible. That's one. And the other one is, and that's more like an organizational cultural problem. The other one to enable what we all heard today and want to see is standardization. And I mean open standards, right? It spans across everything. Like if you take a virtual representation of a car, for example, right? there is not this data exchange format. There are many in the room we're discussing, but not everything is perfectly fitting. Then you have IoT signal handling, some doing still their proprietary stuff, and I think building an open standard and maintain it and make sure everyone has access to it is key for unlocking the promises of industrial metaverse.
Who should be doing this? Is it a task of the industry? Is it a task of the policymakers? Is it all together? Is it users?
Well, I think it's like you saw it also on the web. There are consortiums building like around Kronos, for example, or others. So it's in the making already, right? But it's about every time where people have to work together, it's always getting difficult. Everyone has its own interests and so on and so on. I think we're getting there. I just want to point out, and it's not a huge problem. We're getting there. I just want to say it's not. I don't see hardware or GPU power or something like that as a problem. It's done already. So it's more like about organizational and structural aspects.
Hendrik, do you see it similar?
Yeah, I see it similar. For me, I think I mentioned most of my key elements, which I perceive are hurdles to overcome and mistakes to avoid. Like I mentioned, I think it's, again, start out simple, then grow. Also, frankly, don't get overboard with the eventually sometimes overhyped elements that are certainly there around the metaverse. But then on the flip side, I would say what I'm also seeing a lot is the wrong attitude, which probably is more prominent, let's say, in Europe than it is in the APAC or Americas region, which is with the industrial metaverse, there's now the time to change mindset and also be open to take on some risk. Again, not going overboard with risk-taking, but it is technology, it is innovation for the better, and we should not always assume this is innovation not good for the future. I think that is where we need to change attitude and mindset in Europe in particular. Eventually, we could even say in Germany in specific. That is, for me, the key elements. If we overcome those, then the future is bright in the metaverse.
Susanne, do you have anything to add? Are there any technological challenges from your point of view, or is it structural, organizational, and mindset?
So the technology is already there. You can already use it. You can already start from right now if you want to. The main part really is try it, figure out your use case, dare to run a test run and learn from it. Just waiting until it's perfect and fancy, then probably the others will pass.
And maybe now let's try to look a bit in a crystal ball. So if we have everything, it's our main problem as organization and change in companies and industry. What is your estimation? When we will meet and speak about metaverse, not as a vision, industrial metaverse, not as a vision for future, but as a thing that's going on, and we will discuss specific challenges, specific use cases, and specific profits from this. Will it be next year on the hub? Will it be in 5 years? When?
For me, we are already doing this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like a new concept of connecting things and so together. I think for me, and rewinding back like 30 minutes, it's really about putting the human being into the center of things again, and through technologies like maybe AR device, VR devices, but also what we can offer from Unity's side, aggregating these systems of systems to make decision making and simulation and all of that easier for what all of we are, the human being. So I think a lot of what we discussed already started. I don't know if it will ever end. There will always be new technologies that you can add to this. So I don't want to give an estimation. I think we have to define the goal and the expectation a bit closer to say, well, if you want to have a full virtual collaboration with all your colleagues, with every detail in the car by sitting at home on your sofa, I don't know, maybe that's even possible today, I would say. But unless this is standard, the devices have to be a bit more slicker and maybe cheaper. But I think most of that is possible today.
Very good. Hendrik, would you agree with this?
Well, I agree in general. I would say it is already happening to the point when it is coming. I would say it is already there. I think it certainly got accelerated during COVID times for obvious reasons in some areas because also of the risk-taking mindset change that happened. If you ask me, when will it really hit mainstream as an industrial metaverse, I'll probably say 2 years, potentially. That being said, this is mass adoption. I think it's worse to think about starting earlier than this and experience, because you always will need, no matter whether this is gonna get mainstream, you will need the experience, the learning curve for your organization. So therefore, no need to wait, I would say.
We ran out of time. Do you have something to add to this? Like, do you see it similar to Henning and Hendrik?
I see it similar with one point to add. I think we will never be fully done with it. Like we see with every technology, with internet, with mobile phones, as soon as we are at one point, we have the next step, we have the next ideas. A couple of years ago, when mobile phones were invented, we were just like, yeah, I can make calls now from everywhere. Nobody would have guessed you have all your mails, all your work programs on there. So as soon as we reached one level, we will definitely reach for the next one.
Thank you very much. So I hope every one of you will go to your work tomorrow and tell to your team, let's start to do Metaverse, let's look for use cases. And yes?
And don't stop playing games.
Exactly. That's a good point to add. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have this discussion. And if you would like to continue this discussion, please join our speakers in the speaker lounge, and they will be happy to answer your questions. Yes. Thank you very much.
All right.